Dr. Nwakerendu Ike. I will be speaking on effective workplace communication. First, let me say that I'm a marketing communications professional of over 16 years, and I'm also a trainer, a corporate trainer, and I just love to share knowledge. I love to share knowledge, and I love to learn from others also, and that is why I accepted to be part of this conversation today. Okay, I have a slide to share. I like to talk about effective workplace communication. So there was a statement that Obehi referred to when I said business communication is first within and then without. Of course, we know in communication, it comes from an idea that you have inside of you before you can channel it through any pathway to get to others and share it with others. But also, I said that to mean that communication in business begins with what happens in the workplace, because that is where policies are cooked, that is where the rules are set for business. And so that sets the tone for what happens with the customer, with other stakeholders, okay? And that's why I would discuss this workplace communication, because there are many dynamics today. Workplace has changed in the past few years, and certain things have become important that we recognize them when we communicate in the workplace. Of course, we know that the workplace is a professional environment, and so communication in the workplace should be largely professional, whether it is face-to-face, is a formal communication or informal communication between colleagues and in the ranking order in the workplace. Okay, so effective workplace communication. The outline we go, I will just talk about what I call the 5 W's of workplace communication, where I will discuss how we can understand workplace communication, and then the elements of effective workplace communication, that the principles important to apply in having effective workplace communication, and then how do we master workplace communication. Okay, what I call the 5 W's of workplace communication. First, I adapted this concept from journalism. You know, in journalism, we talk about the 5 W's and H. Okay, when you are writing as a journalist, you take note of that. So that's the framework I have adopted for this presentation. I know that over time, this is also being applied in business problem solving, where you're advised to check out 5 whys if you're trying to do a root cause analysis. Okay, but for this conversation, the 5 W's are who, what, when, why, and where. Who in workplace communication refers to who are the people communicating, who are the communicators. They could be managers, they can be from the manager to the subordinates, it could be across managers, it could be across departments, and that also speaks to the audience, who are the people listening. Okay, so it's important to identify who we are communicating with in the workplace, because that would determine how we package the communication. It would determine the channel through which we pass the communication. Okay, then what are we communicating? What are we communicating? First, we talk about the nature of the communication. Is it going to be written or verbal communication? Is it going to be formal or informal kind of communication? Because these things have rules that guide them, that, in elementary letter writing, if you are writing informal letter, there is a way you put the tone of the letter. Okay, so what you are communicating in the workplace actually helps to determine the tone to use. Okay, and then when Sometimes communication in the workplace can be an everyday thing, but there are also communications that happen on a weekly. Someone can say there's a weekly report that must be turned in to the chief executive or to a particular manager. In agile environments where you have stand-up meetings, that happens maybe every Monday morning. And then you have trainings that happen. Then you have quarterly meetings that take place where reviews about activities of a particular quarter happen. Some of those reviews also happen monthly, okay? And then you also have things that happen on a daily, the emails that are shared and all that, okay? And then why speaks to what is the motive behind the communication, because that gives it relevance. And so knowing the motive behind the communication, is it going to be to ensure that a particular project has moved on, to know how far you have gone with the project? Is it a report that you have to present because the stakeholders want to know how far that particular project has gone? Are you sharing the results of a particular thing that has taken place? Are you updating a particular group of people? Are you just having a chat with a fellow manager because you want to resolve an issue? Okay, so the why of the communication also becomes important, because that would be necessary in packaging the communication. That would be necessary in determining the channel to be used in that communication. There are some communications that have to happen face to face because you want to achieve a particular result. You can't just pass it through a channel that is not face to face. And so you have to create time to find an opportunity to meet with the person or the persons, okay? Then we talk about where. So I've been talking about how all these factors determine the place, and where becomes that channel that we're talking about. The channels can be face-to-face, when you have a group meeting that is face-to-face, or a group training session that is face-to-face. That becomes a physical location kind of meeting. You have that as where it is happening. But you can also have, like we have a collaborative tool like Teams, and communication is happening there. Of course, the email channel is a very important tool where communication happens in the workplace. And we now have to be careful that we follow the rules that guide these channels so that we can deliver properly and avoid unnecessary noise, in ensuring that the information is passed across, that the message is received by the person that ought to receive it. Okay, so when you look at all these, you discover that whether a communication is happening among managers, or from managers to subordinates or co-workers or team members, or to the stakeholders, or that it is happening on any particular channel, there are principles to follow to make it effective, okay? And that's the next point I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be sharing 10 elements of effective workplace communication. So whether it is a face-to-face or digital-based communication, the first thing I like to talk about is clarity. Clarity. Ensuring clarity means that you don't have to create ambiguity when you communicate. You are clear about the message you are sending, such that someone who interacts with that communication understands the motive, understands the purpose, okay? So clarity is important, because when you are not clear with the message, someone who is receiving, the recipient, is going to give it their own interpretation. When they give it their own interpretation, they will respond in that manner, just because you are not clear enough. Okay, get me a cup of water. okay? Then you have water in that particular place in the refrigerator. You have water in the dispenser. You have water in various places. And you just say, get me a cup of water. And the person did not bother to clear, where am I getting the water from? From what source am I getting the water? And then the person comes bearing a bottle of water. I said, but this is not what I mean. This is not what I mean. I meant you should get it from, I did not I mean that you should get from the refrigerator. You should just get it from the crates. I don't need it chilled. But you did not communicate clearly, okay? But what happens when communication is not clear? It is important that someone asks for clarification, because there is no need to use that as a moment to begin to have altercation with someone. Just ask for clarification, okay? Because sometimes someone may not be clear enough because they probably communicated in a hurry. They probably were not in their best of mind when they try to communicate, okay? And then closely related to that is completeness. From the example I gave earlier, you see that when a communication is not complete, the tendency of someone filling the gap by themselves is there. And then when they fill the gap by themselves, you might get a wrong result. So completeness requires that we bring in all the elements that are required in a particular communication to ensure that whoever is interacting with that particular information, with that particular piece of message, is able to get all that is required in that message, okay? If we had this event today and you get the invite and it shows January 20th, 2024, and there is no time, that communication is not complete. Somebody might miss it. Somebody might not be able to participate in that event, even though that person was supposed to be part of it. Okay, so imagine that there is a meeting that is scheduled in the office and the proper channels have been used to send the message, but that message did not show that it is for a particular set of people. And it's communicated as though everyone should appear. And then you come to the meeting, everyone is there. What do you think would happen? There will be confusion. Why? The information was not complete ab initio. Okay? So completeness becomes important. This requires sitting down and properly thinking through what I want to communicate so that I put all the information required in the bucket before I share it with others. Okay? And then I talk about conciseness. Today, everyone is busy. People are busy doing their work on their desk or thinking about how to meet up with one project or the other. And then you share a message with them, and it's something that they have to go through and read, and there are other information on the mail waiting to be attended to. So conciseness talks about brevity of the information, straight to the point. There's something they call KISS, okay? Keep it short and simple. You see, some years back, Twitter was introduced into the communication channels that we have. And that channel forced people, when it started, to restrict how many words that you use. And then you must still say it complete. So brevity requires that we know how to communicate our information complete within a very short space, okay? Again, if you are sending an SMS to someone, certain channels would only take 160 characters, and you don't want to have 2 pages. That means you need to sit down and construct it in such a way that someone who reads it gets the full information within the 160 characters. This is something that someone has to be deliberate about, because you need to remember that people don't have time, on their hands. Everyone is seeking to pursue and get one thing or the other. And in our fast-paced environment, fast-paced workplaces, places of work, nobody has enough time to just keep reading your own message, except it's a report that the person has to go through it line by line and all that. Okay, even at that, you have to have what is called executive summary, which the person would at least go through and get the gist of the message. And if they need to now refer to something else within the report, they can seek where it is and then get that information. So the next is cultural awareness. Today in our workplaces, we have mixed people from mixed environments, people from various cultures work in the same workplace, and people with various orientation, different gender, different race. And then you want to communicate, you communicate not bearing in mind that there are such people within your environment. Then you are going to offend someone. You might just be gaslighting someone without knowing it because of the tone that has been used. Okay? Recently, I heard something about some people now even having preferred gender pronoun. Okay? And you may not be able to get everyone's preference, but it requires that you use words that people can easily relate with. If we chose that a platform should be used for communication, and on that platform, you cannot translate what you say to a particular other language, and the workplace comprises of people of different languages, it becomes difficult carrying everyone along, okay, using that channel. Okay, so cultural awareness requires that we are aware of the different places that people are coming from in our work environment, and we are able to put together information that will reach them and not go against their cultural norms, go against their gender, go against their religious practices and things like that, their race and all that. Okay, so we need to pay attention to this, because the workplace today, especially where you now have a remote workplace, and you don't know where someone is calling you from, and you are in a meeting and you just say something that would offend that particular person. So this is an important element in the workplace communication. Attention. Now, attention, I'll put it in two ways. First, paying attention to what is being said during a communication event, and showing attention. Paying attention now, we are in a meeting right now, and someone decides to leave their microphone on and begins to do some other things at the background. It becomes distracting, and then the person himself or herself will not be paying attention to any other thing that is being said. The person will not be able to come out of that meeting knowing what has been discussed. And then the person will not be able to act appropriately because they have not received the right information that will help them to act. Okay? Now, showing attention, giving attention. When you are writing an email, for instance, do you choose the subject line that will show attention, that will give attention to your own message? Remember, I said earlier, when you open your email as someone in a workplace, you have a number of emails. Maybe on Monday morning, you just discover that some people have sent in mails and all that. You are checking through to know which one should I attend to. The one that gives you a headline, a subject line that you can easily understand is the one you might just easily pick. If your own has important content, but the subject line does not show it, it becomes really difficult. Okay, and then maybe the subject line has shown it, and then the person opens the mail. You begin by telling stories instead of going straight to the point. You have not given enough attention. Now, I learned something about working with CEOs that are top executives, That when you want to send a message to them, you start from giving the summary. Okay, don't start from the stories. Give them, summarize what you want to say in the first 2-3 sentences. They've gotten the message. If they want more information, they will ask for it. But if you don't do that and you don't have good subject line, the person might just miss your message. Okay, and that's also why it's important for messages to be concise, so that they can be easily picked. Okay, then we have positive attitude. Now, positive attitude requires that we are in the positive frame of mind when we are communicating. You don't communicate being grumpy just because something is happening at home or in your personal life, and then because of that you are using that same attitude to communicate in the workplace. It's going to show. It's going to show. And someone will not be able to receive your message the way they ought to have received it, because you have allowed your personal idiosyncrasies to get into what you ought to be saying to the person. And then you are speaking on a tone that is not professional to your colleague. Okay? You send an email and then you are using words that shouldn't appeal to the person that you are sending the email to. Positive attitude. It's been discovered through research that even when you are having a conversation on phone with someone and you are smiling, the person will get the message from your tone. If you are frowning, the person will get the message from your tone. Of course, sometimes when you are frowning, you might not know when you said something that would just spark some concern at the other end of the call. So positive attitude creates a positive atmosphere around you, and you are able to, use the right words to communicate and be able to get your message across without offending the other person, and ensuring that you get your message properly to the person. Active listening. Active listening. I normally say listening is a big deal in communication, but no one teaches it in school. Interestingly, we do reading in school, we do writing in school, we even do speaking in school, but we don't normally do a listening. And then so you discover that people are confused because the greater percentage of communication is actually about listening. And so you see that people do what they call partial listening or selective listening instead of active listening, where you give attention to what someone is saying. How do you ensure that you are listening actively when someone is talking, maybe on a face-to-face conversation? By nodding, by just showing some signs to the person that you are getting the message, using eye contact and all that. Okay, if you are speaking face-to-face with someone and then you are busy touching your phone. In fact, recently I saw someone who was explaining that if you have a meeting with someone and then you simply just put your phone in front by the table there, the likelihood is that the person might receive the message that you are just really not giving them attention, that the phone is more important, because very soon you're going to touch that phone. Okay, so active listening means being into the conversation. Okay, feedback is the end of a communication. In journalism those days, we said that a communication is not complete until there is a feedback. Okay, and feedback in this case can be the response that comes from what you said to someone. It can also be that someone is pointing out something to you that you need to pay attention to in the workplace. They are all feedback. And then how do we respond to feedback? Just be graceful, okay, with feedback. Don't take it personally, because if someone sends a feedback to you that is critical, the person might be wanting to help you but may not have sent the message across well. So what are we supposed to do? Be more constructive in your feedback so that it doesn't offend but plays the role it wants to play in the life of the other person. And then ensure that your initial communication is correct so that your feedback can be accurate. The feedback you are expecting can be accurate. Okay, so feedback is important in the workplace communication, because at the end of the day, it is what shows the final result of what is being expected. Non-verbal cues. Non-verbal cues talk about the mannerisms that go with communication, the facial expressions, okay, the gesticulations, and all that. All these play the role of helping to give deeper understanding to what is being said. Today, nonverbal cues have even included emojis that are used in digital communication. And some emojis that people carelessly use can send a particular kind of message and they may not know. So it becomes important that you actually study emojis and understand what they mean before you use them. Okay? So because nonverbal cues can actually make or mar a communication process. Someone is saying, sorry, I am really sorry. And they are looking the other way as they're saying it. They are saying something with their mouth, but their face is saying something else. Okay? Someone says, okay, I've heard. And they're just saying it that way. It doesn't show that the person has gotten the message. Okay? So non-verbal cues are things that we must pay attention to beyond what is being said per time. Even when a communication is digital, read the mail properly. Sometimes when it is in full caps, it could mean that you are shouting at the person, okay? And the person gets that message that way. It's going to affect the way the person responds. And finally, on this particular set, we have empathy. And empathy, you discover that in this part of the slide, we talk about more of how to ensure that between you and the other person, there is proper understanding. Empathy talks about going into what the other person is thinking, looking from the other person's perspective, okay? So that you don't just communicate without thinking of what the other person feels about it, okay? Now, I see that there are two sets of empathy where you have intentional empathy, where you actually go into finding out how the other person feels, and then psychological empathy. Now, you discover that empathy is easily shown when you know someone better. You tend to be more empathetic with someone that is actually familiar to you. Now, what do you now do if someone is not familiar to you, but you still have to show empathy? That's where psychological empathy comes in. What do you look for? What is the connection between the two of you? What can be a point of intersection between the two of you? So you create that imagination inside of you and use that to think of what would the person prefer in that communication. Okay, so that makes it a very important point when we are in workplace communicating, because if we don't seek to understand how the other persons feel, we would not communicate in line with how they can understand the message and be able to respond appropriately. Okay, the final slide here is mastering workplace communication. Having talked about these principles and having understood the channels and the various ways we can reach out and communicate, what do I do, to ensure that I master workplace communication? First, proofread. Take some time to proofread, because it's better you take some time to proofread before sending that message, before sharing that communication, before going to that presentation. It's important that you proofread that thing you want to set out to use, so that not another person is picking out the wrong tenses, the wrong spellings and things like that for you. Even when you are sending an email, for instance, and you have mixed up what you wanted to say, one sentence supposed to come before the other, and just mixed up. If you just take time to proofread, you can rearrange them properly before sending that mail. Okay? The next one is rehearse. Rehearse, especially this is important for presentations, whether it is digital presentation or face-to-face presentation. Rehearse. Take some time to rehearse. You want to be better. You want to get better. Okay? Don't take it for granted that you just get better that way. Okay, in public speaking, you are told about standing before the mirror, speaking as if you are talking to the crowd. Just checking your gesticulation and things like that, checking your tone and the way you are able to raise your voice, to inflection and things like that. Okay, so rehearse, then adapt. I've talked about awareness of the environment and all that. Adaptation then requires that we are able to seek out what is going to work in the particular circumstance and get used to it, instead of complaining about what is not working the way I feel it should work. If that is the way it has been established to work, get used to it. Learn what it means to work that way and get used to it. Maybe in the work environment, there's a particular communication style that works better. You are not used to it. Try to learn it and get used to it. Adapt. Adapt also, for me, is that you find out what is the basics and then be innovative enough to put it in such a way that others would be able to receive your communication in the way they can understand it. Okay, so being able to adapt in the workplace helps you to reach out to people easily and be able to send your message across, be able to show what you are doing and be able to carry other people along, be able to collaborate, request feedback. Okay, so you are communicating, you are doing your work, you are doing the various things you are doing, and you are not willing to take feedback about how it's either working or not working from others. It's important that you are intentional about getting better. And one of the ways to get better is through feedback. So you can go ahead and talk to people before a presentation that, please, I would like you to watch out for me when I'm presenting. Help me to pick a few things that you think I may need to work on later and just tell me about it and things like that. So requesting feedback is a very good thing to do. Having an open mind and being free to continue to improve is something that anyone in the workplace should be conversant with and be able to continue to use to get better in whatever they do.
When you were talking, you did say something to the effect of paying attention to active listening, that it is vital to better pass on your message. And when I was hearing you, it appeared as if you were actually speaking to to people who are maybe particularly in the area of say, maybe, for example, in podcasting, because that is also my area. And in fact, we are preparing a training program for March of this year, because we said that we're going to train some businesses who should use podcasting as a way to bring their message out. So that is something that we really must pay attention to. But having listened to that, and of course, being a podcaster myself, I know that that is really vital. It's at the centerpiece of what I do. It is very important for me. I know that it's also very important for people. Not only in the area of podcasting, of course, you listen not just because you are in the podcast world, but the question is, are there some ways to learn this active listening? And what is your recommendation? Because not everybody, in fact, a lot of people don't know how to listen. They only speak. But if you look at how the human being is designed now, you see, you have 2 ears, you have only 1 mouth. Even if you were not very intelligent, just do your mathematics. I think it should help. So which are the best way you recommend for people to learn how to listen first before they talk, so that they can become effective in their communication? Please help us.
You nailed it when you talked about the fact that listening is for everyone. And the first thing I would say is to minimize distractions when you have to be part of a communication. Remove everything that would really be a distraction to you. Today, we are in a digital world, and it's as if having face-to-face conversation is becoming something people are not really paying attention to anymore. And so you discover that you have like 4 people in a room, and the 4 of them are focusing on their digital device. And someone begins to speak in that place. Nobody is paying attention to what the person is saying, because they are engrossed in what is happening in their digital device they have. So if that person must get an attention and be listened to by those people in the room, they must put away that thing that is purely a distraction to them. I watched a video a few days ago of a child playing with the father, and so long as the father played with the child was happy. And suddenly the father drops the child and then picks up his phone. And the child was trying to get the attention of the dad, doing everything to get the dad's attention, to no avail, because the man's attention has shifted to the digital device that he has. Okay, now, if you have to now look at listening from the perspective you talked about, the podcasting, which happens on a device, how does someone concentrate to listen and be able to get the juice of what is being said on the podcast? Again, when you have to listen, ensure that there is no interference of noise. For instance, every one of us in this conversation right now has ensured that wherever we are is shielded from interferences. You can have interference coming from outside the room where you are, but if you have your earphone, then that filters the noise and keeps it off, okay? So what is it that can help you filter what you are hearing so that you can listen in and get the important information you need? Try and make sure that you fix that. If there is something that someone that needs to give you a message, you can put a message to let the person know that they can't get you within so and so time until you are available, that you are not available for so and so time, so that you can concentrate. One other thing that people do that actually does not help with listening is choosing what they want to listen to. It's good in certain areas, it's not good in certain areas. If you know that what is going to come from a particular program or an event would not all benefit you, then you choose when to be part of that conversation. But if you are in a meeting where everything is important to you and then you must pay attention to that, put off whatsoever that would distract. I think this is a very practical way that can help people. And then focus on who is speaking. If you are in a room, focus on who is speaking, make eye contact, and so that you can even see beyond what the person is saying and also see the facial expression, which would give you more information beyond even what the person says. Okay, thank you. I think this can help with listening because more or less it's about ensuring that you pay close attention to who is speaking. You know, I ended my conversation by talking about keep learning. And I heard Joy Bart say something about also continuous learning. And I think that is something that anyone who is in business or who is in a professional work should not toy with. Today, you have a world that is changing daily. You have a world that is evolving. New things are coming out. Don't be shy about opening up yourself to learn things that you didn't know about before, because obviously the things coming out are meant to improve our lives. They're meant to help us innovate better, okay? And so don't shy away from learning them. If you discover that what you have learned has become outdated, be free to unlearn and then relearn and upskill where necessary. And it doesn't really matter what is your grade or level in business or in your professional life, okay? Because there are some other things that you might need to add to your core area to become better, at what you do. So I would just say, be open to learning and embrace continuous improvement. I am on LinkedIn and I am on Instagram. Nwakerendu Ike is my contact on LinkedIn, and you can always catch me up there for any conversation. Thank you very much, Obehi, for having me on this call.